Is the act of resisting the urge to engage in a behavior that is identified, that act of resisting, is that considered, I mean, is that the work that we should be doing? Like
Yes,
that?
there's a place for that. Yes, of course. That's the resistance. Just as, pardon me, just as we try not to express a negative, the impulse to express the negative emotion comes. We put resistance by withholding the expression, yes, for the purpose of containing that energy. Because there is energy there, but it's so caught up in this psychological feeling of I that then it becomes physical when we express it. So putting the resistance against it enables all the rest of the deeper observation to happen. The same with chief feature. It's good for whatever a person's feature is. It's good if when you learn to resist what was Gurdjieff called it the involuntary manifestation. It's a very interesting phrase he chose. Try to control the involuntary manifestation. Those two words are very interesting to think about. What was he saying there? He didn't mean that a person with power should stop being naturally aggressive. But he did mean, I believe, to control. What happens with people with power is they don't, unbeknownst to themselves, they become destructive in relation to other people and in relation to situations. And it's quite involuntary. And it's sort of the outer, it's like each of these layers I was talking about, they each have each have layers. And power can be direct. And people with power are often direct, and that's a good thing. But what happens is when they then become sort of warlike and they become destructive and they start tearing people down and they start tearing the environment down so that's more involuntary, more extreme manifestation. So yes, resistance is a good thing, bearing in mind, however, that at no point would we want to be identified. I mean, you're almost asking the impossible in the beginning to say that, but that's the goal. See, we see our behavior, we're identified, we manifest a certain way, we don't even know about it because we think it's I, and then we hear about this, and then we see it, and then we judge it, or we try to control it, or we're afraid of it, depending on our chief feature. Because usually chief feature reacts to itself. Because awareness, keep this in mind too, awareness does not react. Awareness does not react to what it sees. When it's in its purest form, let's say, which is not identified, there's no reaction because there's no sense of I. There's nothing to protect or fix, or it's just witnessing. And it's all the reaction you see is coming from another side of yourself, which is usually connected somehow to chief feature or to an associative feature.
I would say here, Peter, also that to be cautious about this. So resisting that thing is the work, yes, but is not resisting for its own sake. So this resisting, this conscious resisting, is accompanied by clear aim, by efforts to observe this thing. And now there is this spoke in the wheel. And now I continue to observe this. Yeah, so I resist the behavior. Now I am aware of the inner workings of it. And then I'm aware of the me feeling. So resisting with a lot of self-observation and for the purposes of transcending this small me, mechanical me, contracted. So resisting for the purpose of expanding and raising one's level of consciousness.
Not just not doing the thing and saying, look
Yes.
how great I am at it.
Right.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
or I'm following the rules and not doing the thing.
Right.
Right.
Another way we could say it is with this resistance we are trying to exercise or use, it is the intellectual parts of sinners, usually, doing their right work of controlling, containing the emotional parts of sinners, and sometimes the moving parts of sinners. And the lower you go in this hierarchy of the parts of sinners, the more automatic and easy it is for chief feature to manifest, because there's less attention, there's less control. It's more and more involuntary. And so what we're talking about really is trying to be in the intellectual parts of sinners with controlled attention. This does not mean controlling every aspect of our movements and thoughts and emotions. It means containing attention. And this is chief feature runs off of this energy of attention. And then when you could think of it when attention is like a fuel, and then when the secondary fuel of identification is added to it, that's just an analogy, but that's one way you could think of it, then it becomes more explosive. And then now chief feature is running away with us. It's running away with itself. And sometimes we catch it when it's already run away. But that's when we go, oh my God, look at that. I did that again. I did it again. I made it worse for myself again, whatever. And then that's when it's already gone out through the jacks or the queens or something. And then sometimes we can see it starting to emit. For example, vanity. Do you know if someone says something either positive or negative about you, you can almost feel like a flush. A flush will come over. At least that's how I experience it. It'll be like a flush. You're like, oh, me? Who, me? Kind of, I mean, it's a good thing. Yeah. Oh. Or it's like, oh, what? Why are they looking at me? They don't, but it's a flush. It's like a negative flush or dark flush of energy. So it's partly emotional. You can feel it in your chest, and then you can feel it in your instinctive body. But I notice, for example, I never feel it in my legs. I don't feel it in my elbows. It's usually in my chest, my solar plexus, and then up. And then it will rise up, the positive feeling or the negative feeling. And with something like power, though, I will feel it in my whole body. I'll feel it in the body as well. It'll be instinctive, much more instinctive as well as emotional. It depends, of course. See, there's so many variables, like a person's center of gravity. Somebody with who's moving centered and who's a passive type and who has power will behave differently than someone who is emotionally centered and an active type who has power as a chief feature. So you can't just separate all these things. And that's why in this study, you see, we learn all of these things and they're all connected. And it takes time to see the big picture of how they're all connected. But chief features, it's a big idea in the fourth way psychology. It may be, I mean, psychologically, in terms of what's behind the feeling of I, is probably the biggest idea.
One thing I'd like to add is that this chief feature is like a beast, like a dog that was well fed. And important. It's the dog who becomes the master. So through persistent work, we don't feed this dog, and we are the master. We are the witness of it, and we don't feed it, and then it will diminish. It will diminish. So there are tendencies that will diminish through not going there anymore, through also continually observing, resisting, seeing what's underneath, and also through understanding, seeing that whatever the feature is supposedly supposed to do for us, it doesn't do that. It doesn't. So through understanding the utility and the impact of a feature. So my point here is that it can diminish a lot, and it can starve certain things. Like somebody would, it's possible to have vanity and to work on oneself and to diminish this compulsive thing to talk about oneself and to develop the genuine openness towards other people and to be interested in other people through having received photographs from people and girlfriends that, dude, it's boring. And also seeing how other people have this vanity feature, they all talk about themselves, it's boring, it's obnoxious. So through really seeing the inner workings for what they really are, they have less payoff. Or with the dominance, my case was like telling people what to do to be better, although they didn't ask me, and as well be like some suggestion or feedback or something, and yeah, it can diminish to the point that it can be totally comfortable seeing whatever issue people have and letting them be, and not through the understanding actually that, man, first of all, it's disrespectful. They didn't ask me. It's a wrong triad. If I tell people what to do, they will actually, first of all, I may be wrong. Second is that they are not interested, they are not ready, may create more denying force. Another thing is realizing that, man, this person is like that due to all their life. And it's not going to change that I say something. So anyway, for understanding, all of this diminishes, and one is more quiet, and so it's not involuntary anymore. It's not compulsive anymore. But it can, when needed, it can come, or somebody can still maintain leadership. Let's say there's, how do you call that? There's dominance. There's some compulsive leader, but that can diminish, and then, but the leadership qualities are still there when needed. And all this applies to all the other features.
Yeah, it could be a strength deployed strategically
Yes.
instead of a compulsion.
Can be a strength deployed strategically instead of a compulsion, yeah.
And it will still happen automatically. This needs to be said, because when we say that, it's who's making the decision to employ it tactfully.
God damn it.
And so, no, it's not. Consciousness does not do that. I'm just trying to distinguish. Awareness does not do that.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It doesn't think. It's not. We are what we are, and we operate a certain way. And what we're talking about is what can happen is we will start to manifest, but there won't be so much identification behind it. And now there won't be so much a feeling of I there. And this will tamper let's call it the unpleasant aspect of chief feature, the negative aspect of it. It's what is the negative aspect of chief feature? It is that it sucks awareness dry. And that's it. That's what's wrong. The behavior of these features, they're not bad. There's a tendency to think they're bad. Some are better, some are worse. It's not true. None of them are bad. None of them are good. It's automatic behavior, and we are an automatic mechanism. And but there's something that doesn't have to identify with that. Doesn't have to become identified with us living the life of someone who has a certain kind of impulse or a combination of impulses. For example, Mihai, he need not be so, he's not so demonstrative with his dominance, right? He's very gentle and caring and thoughtful, and I don't feel a big push of I need to now impose my identity with some kind of dominance. No. And so that's what it diminishes, because the identification diminishes. We're not trying to change the person that we are. The person that we are is trying to change itself, but awareness is not trying to do that. It's not caught in that loop.